We have a major Toronto Raptors free agency update to discuss as we are in a new era of Toronto Raptors basketball following the Masai Ujiri firing, and it starts off with the Raptors targeting Ben Simmons. That's right. That's the news report, and this is Raptors fans fired up, just given his surface-level fit with a guy like Scottie Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, our starters, as well as our bench unit following the NBA draft with Colin Murray-Boyles and a lot of the defending players we have out there off the bench. So there's a lot of confusion as to why the Toronto Raptors will do this. However, there is an avenue where this ends up being a complete 1,000 IQ move by the Toronto Raptors. Of course, it also could go very poorly. He wouldn't be on a significant contract, but we'll break down what the reports are right now, why Raptors fans are fired up about this, and why this really could end up being a massive win for the Toronto Raptors, specifically at the center position. So we'll dive into it all out here in this video. But folks, I want to first thank every single one of you for helping us march towards our goal of 40,000 subscribers. You guys have been crushing it, hitting the subscribe button as of late. And if you want to join the already over 38,350 us, joining in daily for all this latest Toronto Raptors news, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button because we don't stop with the Raptors coverage, especially with free agency opening up in the next couple days. So lots of stuff to dive into, but what's going on? Why are we bringing up the young socialite? That's right, the young socialite watch is back out here in 2025. We have a Ben Simmons update that, similar to the Giannis and KD stuff. We're going through all the greatest hits out there on Raptors Digest now because Ben Simmons has once again been linked to the Toronto Raptors, as we have a new report coming out with Michael Grange saying the Raptors had 3 roster spots open before ESPN's Shams Charania reported Saturday night that Garrett Temple, who played an important role as a veteran voice on a young team, intends to sign a 1-year deal with the Toronto Raptors. So covered this in a video yesterday. Garrett Temple is back with the Raptors, so now there's 2 open roster spots for this team, and that's where this update came in, as another name that might be out there is Ben Simmons, who is often injured, the former number 1 overall pick, who cobbled together some interesting box score totals last season, 9.2 assists per game, 7.7 rebounds, and 1.2 steals per night per 36 minutes, and a limited role over 51 games split between Brooklyn Nets and the Los Angeles Clippers. So essentially, Michael Grange is linking Ben Simmons as a target of interest out here in this free agency, this upcoming summer for the Toronto Raptors. Now, given the activity since Masai Ujiri's departed, big fish names, Ben Simmons definitely doesn't follow the big fish title. Don't get me wrong. If this is Ben Simmons ends up being our big fish, that would be pretty crazy. But we know this new organization, this new leadership loves those big names, and we know Bobby Webster has doubled down out there on these switchable defensive wings and size and all that type of stuff. So Ben Simmons, especially when healthy, fits that mold, even in his current form. Like, of course, and I talked about a way this really works out. This doesn't involve him getting back to all-star, all-NBA caliber of play. That feels like that ship has sailed. Of course, you never know, but that is unrealistic expectations for Ben Simmons coming in to any NBA team next season. But there is an avenue where this makes a ton of sense. So we'll talk about that as this video goes along. But firstly, let's take a look at Ben Simmons' stats in total last season. As essentially we bring it up here now, Ben Simmons averaged 5 points per game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, closer to 6 assists per night, 0.5 blocks, and 0.7 steals per game. And he's still only 28 years old, despite being in the NBA for a fairly long time. And, he finishes around the rim. He is 6'10". That's one thing people forget to bring up. He is a tall man out there on the basketball court, and has a resume, has a history of being a really solid basketball player. And again, you see this, all these stats were in 22 minutes per game last season, so not extended run out there on the court by any stretch of the imagination, but you dive back in previous seasons before he demanded that trade, before he had some back injuries and stuff. Ben Simmons was a 3-time All-Star, we saw him in the playoffs, elite defensively, and was just a great feel for the game, fast, quick, elite defensively, all that type of stuff. So Ben Simmons has been good at some points in his career. Now has just been a solid utility role player over the last couple of seasons. So what's going on specifically in terms of why I'm getting excited about? Well, in the back half of last year, he did give some decent run for the LA Clippers, and didn't, as the series went along against the Denver Nuggets, his minutes were diminished. So that is one thing that might concern a lot of Raptors fans. He didn't get a ton of run when it mattered most out there for the LA Clippers, but playing against the Denver Nuggets, that's a tough situation to be in. So I get a lot of people seeing this and being like, what on earth are we doing wasting a roster spot on Ben Simmons? What's happening here with all of this? Well, there's a couple avenues where this makes a ton of sense, and specifically, this makes sense. The Raptors don't have a backup center right now. We decide to forego drafting Colin Malawach and brought in Colin Murray-Boyles, who is 6'7" a wing. Ben Simmons is 6'10". And while he did have his minutes diminished out there for the LA Clippers during the postseason and stuff, he was a guy that was actually having a pretty positive impact in terms of affecting the game for the LA Clippers. So if we take a look at some of the things that Clippers fans have said about him, Ben Simmons was such a great ad. Can't believe I'm writing this, but playing him like Kevin Looney has been exactly what this team needs when Zoo is out. So Ben Simmons was playing the backup center role, that center position out there for the LA Clippers last year, and he was really effective at it. And absolutely, I wish he would look at the rim, though. Of course, he's not taking those shots the same way he did before. His defense is incredible. He was also clearly getting out under Nikola Jokic's skin, as when they were off ball, Jokic was a lineman pushing him around everywhere. So it's, Ben Simmons can play that center position. He did a good job on Jokic last season. Reading some of these comments, I was hoping that he made the putback dunk, layup, and all that stuff, but it's he's small ball lineups and being that center position. He guarded Jokic really well full court. That's exactly what they wanted him for. And it's weird how I've never realized how tall Simmons was for some reason. He's a legit 6'10" and looks only a shade smaller than Nikola Jokic. Impressive, all that stuff. So there's a lot of positive comments in regards to Ben Simmons, playing against the Denver Nuggets, matching up against that team that, of course, is one of the best center, is probably the best player in the NBA, Nikola Jokic. So Simmons can play a role, especially as a backup, especially where we're at a point right now where you don't have a reliable backup center. Of course, the hope is Ulrich Shamshe will be able to fill that here at some point, but Ben Simmons could come in and really have an impact on this Toronto Raptors squad at that spot, because we know, given how we drafted this year, Bobby Webster's looking for players that are intense defensively, that can play that high-caliber play, and Ben Simmons has certainly done that, and when healthy, can still do that out there in the NBA. But also, he's a high IQ passer. Of course, you need him to be more aggressive in terms of really having that positive impact, but even in his limited run last season, still gets a ton of assists, still gets rebounds, still plays phenomenal defense. Don't expect him to be a three-point shooter. It wouldn't make any sense whatsoever to bring Ben Simmons in and then end up playing him on the wing, especially with CMB, being drafted here now at this point, who last season himself didn't have the greatest three-point shooting averages, 26% from behind the three-point line. It doesn't make sense to run, out there on the wings, whatever center we end up getting in free agency and stuff, CMB on the wing, and then having Ben Simmons as a part of our rotation. But if we have Ben Simmons at the center spot, if we run him in the dunker and he's able to defend, he's able to run those systems where Darko Rajaković wants to move fast, have high IQ basketball players, make some great facilitating, Ben Simmons could actually be a very, very interesting fit at those spots, and he'd be very cheap. Like, you could get him on that league minimum contract. So you give a feeler, you see how things go with Ben Simmons out there in your front court, see if he's capable of defending out there at that level. Of course, if Jakob Poeltl gets injured, then you might be in an interesting spot, at that 5 position. But we run Ben Simmons at center, see how it goes, have that sort of mid-post facilitating, and frankly, I'd be fairly excited if this move happened. Now, if we make another move this summer and we bring in, a traditional backup 5, and then we also have Ben Simmons, so he's forced to play like a guard position, a wing position, and we're running lineups out there of Jamal Shead, who, I am a Shead head by all stance. I lead the Jamal Shead fan club, but of course, he is not that elite of a three-point shooter, so Ben Simmons and Shead and CMB out there off the bench, and then Jonathan Mobo, our shooting would be cooked. So that doesn't make a ton of sense, but if we're running Ben Simmons at the 5, intermixed with, guys off the bench and Jacoby Walter, Gradey Dick, Jamison Battle, who can really knock down shots, of course, some of our starters, because we do have some sneaky shooting out there on this team with Immanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett shoots a solid percentage, Brandon Ingram in the mix now. There is some options, and hopefully Scottie continues to develop at that range. I'd say take the risk. I say take the risk, folks. I know some people are going to disagree, but I see a lot of people memeing okay, we're in the new era of Toronto Raptors basketball now. But I don't know. I think this is actually a pretty solid move for the Toronto Raptors if all things are done right. But let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comment section down below. Would you like to see Ben Simmons on the Toronto Raptors? Let me know. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.